I cannot believe I've had this channel for this long and I have not done a ranking of slasher movies. Today that ends. Today I am going to discuss the top 10 slasher movies ever made. Let's go. To anyone that's followed my channel, you pretty much know what number one is going to be. I mean, that's you just know how I am. If you are new to this, then let's take this journey together, okay? Coming in at number 10. Now, I originally made this list like 3 weeks ago, and I posted on Reddit, and a Reddit commenter was like, "Have you seen this movie?" I was like, "I haven't. Let me check it out." I watched it, and now because of watching that movie, my original number 10 is now an honorable mention that I have to mention. Now, mind you, I'm only doing one honorable mention. That doesn't mean there's not hundreds of movies that I could have put in this, but for my list that I originally had, I'm gonna kick this one to honorable mention. My honorable mention is High Tension by Alexandria Aja. The twist of that movie was when I first saw the movie, I was like, I didn't like the way it ended. It seemed silly. After going back and watching it again, and going back and watching it again, and then going back and watching it again, the more I watched it, the more excited and the more I enjoyed that movie. High Tension was the perfect title for that movie because it was very tense and it has one of the best kill scenes in all of horror cinema. If you've seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When I saw it live or when I saw it happen, I did not expect it, even with the setup coming. You're like, oh, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, but they're not going to show it. They showed it and it was glorious. So my honorable mention is High Tension. Coming in number 10, the movie that knocked High Tension out of its place, Pieces. I don't understand how this movie got past me because there was a time when I was watching everything slasher. Like my entire early 20s was just slasher movie, slasher movie, slasher movie. So it's like, I cannot believe I didn't see this one. I watched it and it's great. One of the things I liked about Pieces, number one, is there's a chainsaw used in it. I didn't know that anybody outside of Texas Massacre used that as a main means of kills. The story is typical. It's for that time frame. Like it's not the first kind of movie to make this the killer motivation. It's not the same. It's not the first movie to do that kind of storyline. But what I loved about Pieces is from a pure slasher perspective, there are so many kills, and it focuses on the kills. It doesn't focus on a lot of story. Obviously, there is a story involved, but it doesn't focus on a lot of story. It focuses. If I had to mention it, if I had to think about it, it focuses on the story of the killer. So his story is what the focus is. So everyone around it, everyone in that movie is just playing off of this person. And the fact that there are very little down scenes or down points in this movie. You go from kill to kill to kill to kill, and it's great. If you have not seen Pieces, that's my number 10. Now, number 9, I'm going to go with Child's Play, the original. Some people might scoff at that because they look at this doll as not being legitimate, or maybe like I don't put it in the perspective of how I would fare. I don't put it in a perspective of if I was in a situation, what's my likelihood to survive or not. What made me think of Child's Play and why I put it where I did. It came out either 1988 or 89. I can't remember exactly. So the Child's Play storyline really should not have worked. I mean, when you look at the fact of the serial killer that transferred his body or his soul to a doll, it doesn't seem like something. If you think about it, like conceptually, it doesn't seem like it would last as long as it does. But there have been a ton of movies since then, a TV show that is potentially going into its third season, and it has not lost any steam. How many slasher characters, how many slasher movies have you watched And those characters might get one movie, maybe two movies, and maybe they might have some remakes or whatever in between that. But to keep the story fresh, there's very few. Now, I'm not giving that my number nine because of that longevity. I'm just saying the way that it's set, the way that it was filmed, made it be able to grow and stay for that long. One of the greatest scenes in all of cinema history.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
That's terrifying to anybody. They were. It has a very good score, a very likable character, and a likable killer. But that killer was at his. This is before all the jokes and the quips came in, and it was just a dark horror. Chucky was terrifying in that movie. So my number nine, Child's Play. Number eight for me, Tourist Trap. Now, kind of like Pieces, this one may be another movie that might have flown out of, under some radars. If you guys have not seen Tourist Trap, this is a must watch. For those of you that might not be familiar with what a tourist trap is, it's more of like an older school type thing. When you're taking a road trip and you're driving for a long time and you're like, hey, let's stop in this one spot. They call it a tourist trap because you're a tourist traveling this area you're not used to, and you go and you end up spending a lot more money than you expected, getting a whole bunch of weird stuff that you would never thought of you would get you would get otherwise. That's why it's called a tourist trap. And this movie is exactly that. These group of friends are on a trip. They end up stopping off at this one place, and that the rest is history. Now, what I love about this movie and why I put it so high on my list is it's so unique. In the vein of like a House of Wax or Maniac, when there are mannequins used, the killer in this has telekinesis that can move these mannequins. And you just don't know who the killer is until it's too late. It's a quintessential slasher in the vein that it focuses on one person that this person is really trying to get to. So he goes to all the friends to get to this one person. But again, it was tense, it was ambitious, it was original. And the kills are very, very good. One of the first kills in the movie, very little sound. Well, they use sound in a very in a way that worked very well. But when the person actually gets killed, the silence is what makes it louder than anything else. One of the best, obviously, one of the best slash movies I've ever watched. My number eight, Tourist Trap. Coming in at number seven, I have got to go with Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Now, from a if you were to think of the origin of the slasher film, the first slasher film, we can debate. Some can say it's Halloween. Some would say it's Black Christmas. Some would say it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There are a lot that can be debated on what the first true slasher was. But the first true slasher, from my estimation, is Psycho 1960 by Alfred Hitchcock. In the same vein as Child's Play, Norman Bates' character has lasted for a long time and been at the forefront for a long time. Now, some of the sequels have not been as good. The remake, which I just recently saw not so long ago, absolutely terrible. Let's just strike that one from our memory and focus on this movie here. Alfred Hitchcock, being the master of suspense, he had the best nickname. That's the best tagline for Alfred Hitchcock because this movie was suspenseful. And what I loved about this movie, one of the things that I really like about a good slasher is you don't have to focus on the killer for the entirety of the movie. You don't. You can focus on another story or another main part of the story, and then they mesh. The killer comes in to that story somehow. But when the killer's there, It is very gripping. The shower scene is absolutely iconic. The score is absolutely iconic. The ending, a lot of people, when I think of endings of horror movies, not a lot of people talk about this as being a groundbreaking ending, but it definitely was, because nobody expected that ending leading up to that movie. Now, by today's standards, it may be a little tame, or maybe there are a lot of people that are living today that haven't even seen that movie, so they don't even look at it in that vein. I excuse me. I've never done a list for my greatest endings to a horror movie, but if I had to, it's definitely up there. This one's definitely up there. And the Norman Bates character is terrifying in his simplicity. Absolutely simple. And the presentation, the way that Norman Bates comes across is like just a random person that you would run into anywhere. Not a hulking presence, not a imposing presence, just a random person that you would run into anywhere. And to be this psycho, you would you would not see it coming. So my number 7 is 1960 Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Coming in at number 6, I have to go with Candyman, the original. Again, just like I said about Psycho, the story was great. Now you take something like a Bloody Mary, which predates Candyman. Get in front of a mirror, say Bloody Mary a few times, here comes Bloody Mary. You take that, so the concept of Candyman is not a brand new one, but the presentation of Candyman, especially, especially being a black killer, that hadn't really happened that much in that time. So you have the importance of that. But even if you take that out of it, one of the best scores I have ever heard. The Candyman score is just as recognizable as the Halloween, as the Nightmare on Elm Street, as Hellraiser, a lot of other really big name horror movies that we've seen. Candyman is right there. The Candyman character is terrifying. I mean, he had people afraid to call his name, call his name, and by good reason. There was one of the things that I love about this movie too, and I'll touch on it as we go on more of this list. What I love about Candyman is what I love about slashers in general. If you can spend a bulk of your movie talking about the character and why you should fear this character, why this character is a problem, before you even see the character at all on screen, it makes the on screen presence that much more intense. I stand by it. For the introduction of Candyman, his introduction scene is one of, if not the best introduction for a slasher character. Everything, all the talk, all the build up to that moment, and then when he shows up in a moment where you thought it was supposed to be a happy time for our main protagonist, and then from the moment he shows up, it just goes crazy from there. Candyman is one of the best slasher movies I've ever watched. For me, it's my number 6. At number 5, I have to go with The Burning. If you have not seen The Burning, check it out. In my estimation, The Burning is what Friday the 13th wanted to be. I'm not talking about a specific character. I'm not talking about I'm not saying that Cropsy in The Burning is a more important slasher villain than Jason Voorhees. I'm not saying that. I'm just talking about the movie itself. There were better kills in The Burning. There's a better story in The Burning. There was more in The Burning for me than other camp-based horror movies. This one made me fear camps in general more than just Camp Crystal Lake. Does that make sense? And from my perspective, if I'm gonna watch a slasher or a horror movie and be scared by it, I have to be able to put myself in that position and how I would react to it. that position, I felt I connected on a terrified level more with this one than any other camp-based horror movie. So for me, number 5 is The Burning. At number 4, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Again, as I talked about the start of the slasher movie and who's really to who should get the credit for starting it. I love Halloween. I love Michael Myers. But the masked killer started with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, not only did that start, but the idea of not to pick up a hitchhiker started in that movie. The idea of not really wanting to not trespassing or not being somewhere you shouldn't be. All of the things that we know would get people into some trouble was our protagonists did all of those things we shouldn't do in a horror movie. And what I also like about Leatherface and just the whole movie is after making all the wrong choices, the villains are absolutely terrifying. Not just Leatherface, the entire family. Even from the moment they picked up the hitchhiker, you had a sense that something wasn't right with him. You had a sense that something wasn't right there, and you were uncomfortable from the beginning. And shortly after being picked up, he gave you reason to be uncomfortable. So you never felt that these people were safe from the moment he was picked up. Then you go to the gas station and they're warned not to go to this house. Then they go to the house and need to get gas. I understand the reasons of why they did what they did, but looking back on it, it just, they put themselves in a very, very bad position. The hitchhiker, the grandpa was also scary. And then you have Leatherface. Not only do you have a masked killer, his masks are made up of human flesh. So previous victims, he's wearing their faces to make new victims. Like, the whole concept is terrifying. And one thing that I mentioned in Candyman was when I said about the idea of the first entry of the villain, how it looked. One of the more iconic scenes is Leatherface's first introduction. I mean, there wasn't any grand sound. There wasn't any, you didn't see it coming. There was the pig sounds that were being made, and then all of a sudden you see this hulking face wearing face mask, holding this giant mallet, hammers a guy, pulls him in, and slams the door. And then you just hear the foreboding sound after that. Absolutely terror-inducing. My number 4 best slasher ever, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. Coming in at number 3, I got a little Black Christmas, the original. Now, Black Christmas is amazing to this day. Every single Christmas, I watch this movie. I've been watching it, I don't even know how many years now. It is the best Christmas-based horror movie. And that's not even, there's some competition there. Because I also love Silent Night, Deadly Night. But Black Christmas is the one to really get you scared because of so many reasons. The phone calls, which today obviously it's a little different. We don't have landlines. Some of those, the killers come from inside that, call it from inside the house. Those things don't really work like they once did because the idea of the landline is gone and everybody has a cell phone. But that's either here or that's a small thing. You have to put yourself in the moment in that movie. And when they were getting those phone calls, they were very, it was to a sorority house. So it was a very unnerving situation. And then to hear what was being said on the other end. And then your people are being picked off one by one. Also, what I liked about this, if you look at the history of slasher movies and horror movies, this movie came out in 74. Now, I'm not sure which one came out first, this one or Texas Chainsaw. They were the same year. I just don't remember when in the year they came out. But if you look at slashers prior to, I already mentioned Psycho. There's also Peeping Tom. There's a few other ones, but horror movies back in the day were more you go to this location and then something happens. If you're not in this location, or if you're not in this, this haunted mansion or this decrepit lair or anything like that, then you're pretty much safe. This one was a sorority house by a college. And it was the first introduction that we got into a space where people should be safe for the most part. Should not have to worry about that, at all. And the idea that to this day there was no mention of the killer. The killer got away. For those of you who haven't seen it, spoiler alert. That doesn't happen. That definitely didn't happen back then. So the tenseness of the movie, the intensity of the kills, because even for that time, there were some very good kills, and the setting was amazing. It was a very tense and very well shot movie. And they had a lot of red herrings in to throw you off on who was the killer. It kept you guessing too. It was a guessing game involved with the Christmas theme, involved with the horror movie. There was so much that you got in this runtime. So for me, the third best of all time for slashers, Black Christmas, the original. Coming in at number 2, the original Nightmare on Elm Street. From a concept perspective, this might be number 1. From a concept perspective, because the one place that we should always feel safe is when we're sleeping, and the fact that this killer can invade your dreams, and not only invade your dreams, if you die in your dreams, you die in real life. That is the most vulnerable spot of fear that you can reach somebody. Not so for the theme, it's a great theme. Then you take Freddy Krueger with the razor glove, with the burnt face, and just the fact that he knows when you're asleep, you're in the world that you can't get out of, and he toys with the killer, with his victims before he kills them. There were so many people that grew up around the time of this release that will tell you this is the one movie that terrified them. I saw this movie, I can't remember exactly when, but I was one of those that was terrified of Freddy Krueger. And I never got to the point where I couldn't sleep and watching him, but just I would see his face and just be terrified. I remember we rented the video game one time for Nintendo, and I remember the Nintendo froze on the main screen, and I was too afraid to go turn it off because just his face on this big screen, like I was terrified. That's how terrifying Freddy Krueger is. The score is amazing. The dream sequences are really unnerving, and in that original movie, the jokes that Freddy made later on weren't there. He was much more terrifying of a killer in this one than it got on as the movies went on. So my number 2, definitely Nightmare on Elm Street, the original. Coming in number 1, the greatest slasher ever made, the original Halloween. You guys knew what it was going to be. There's no better movie. There's so many reasons as to why. Before I even get to Michael Myers, number 1, Halloween is where us as horror fans, that's where we watch all our movies. There's no better version of a Halloween movie than the original Halloween. The feel of fall shows throughout. John Carpenter did a great job accentuating what the date was. On top of that, Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasence, rest in peace, is the reason that this movie worked so well. You could tell, you can feel the terror and the fear he had within him. Every time he talked about Michael Myers, and this is the theme from this list, when you talk about how do you build up a horror slasher, you spend more time focusing on other people's story and talking him up before he even arrives, before he even gets there. And another thing that I love about Halloween, and and some of these other sequels did it well too, is the fact that Michael was this specter, that he was in a lot of scenes, but in the background. Whether he'd be driving past when, the scene where someone broke into the hardware store, whether he was staring right outside of Laurie Strode's school, whether he was staring in someone's backyard. There was so much. It was like, I look at Michael Myers as like this super predator that would hunt and just stalk the entire movie through. And then when he started to do what he did, everyone it was so well done, and it was so subtle. Everything about it that was done very well. It wasn't over the top, but it was terrifying. I'll never forget when I turned on the movie to watch it for the first time. I turned it on in the just as Laurie Strode had grabbed the pincushion to stab him in the neck, and I watched from that point. I don't remember how old I was. I was too young to watch it, I would imagine. And the fact that at the end of the movie, after he was shot and fell off the balcony, at the end of the movie, when they looked down and he was gone, mind you, whatever age I was, I'm thinking he's in my backyard. Because another thing, like I talked about with Black Christmas, this happened in a town that could be anywhere. There was nothing specific about Haddonfield that made you feel it was unique to any other place. It could happen anywhere. But and the fact that the killer got up and walked off, I mean, it's such a terrifying concept, a terrifying movie. And Michael Myers' mask was just so blank and motionless. There was nothing there. He didn't care what he did to you. He didn't seem like, that's the crazy thing about a mask. It's like you don't know if he's angry. You don't know if he's like, there's nothing there. And he's just this machine that kept going. And there was no reason given. And that's fine. Not everything needs to be explained away. Sometimes you make something scary by doing much less. You don't have to give a reason why. You don't have to do the whole thing that's his sister. That came later. No one cares. That didn't need to be into the fact. The more you explain, the less scary something gets. The more you try to say what happened because of this, then it takes away the idea that you could be a potential victim if you had nothing to do with what happened. Sometimes leaving it like it is makes it scary. And the theme of this movie, iconic. The people learn piano just to play the Halloween theme. Seriously. So I mean, there is nothing that about this movie that, and it holds up so well. Still to this day, it's just as effective as at any point. So to me, it's not even a thought. The greatest slasher movie ever made is the original Halloween. Thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you liked it. I want to know your thoughts. What are the greatest slashers you've ever seen? Did I get this list completely wrong? Tell me. I have thick skin, I can take it. But I want to know. One thing I know somebody's going to be upset about. I had somebody already say something to me about, why didn't you mention Friday the 13th? That's just my list, and I don't like it that much. It didn't scare me, and I don't want to put a list together that is like the list that everyone would put together. You know what I mean? The burning was where Friday the 13th would have been had I put it there. But I'm thinking, like, if I'm going off of a camp-based, and I'm comparing two camp-based movies, and the one that I'm thinking it's better, just because the villain doesn't last as long in the history books as one, I'm not going to just choose Jason just for the sake of being Jason. So yeah, that's my list. I want to know your thoughts. Did you like it? Did you didn't like it? What is your list? Thank you guys for joining me. See you guys next time.